This is the Contagion Chronicle in Odense, Denmark. The year is 2019. Our characters do not start as members of the sworn or the false. Our characters do not start with knowledge of the contagion or any of its habits, least of all in this particular city. Some of these characters know each other from the very start. Some of these characters have yet to meet. In this, our first session, we're going to experience an introduction of all of these characters, and hopefully by the end of it, they'll have reason to come together. And maybe they will encounter some agents of the contagion, or some of those who wish to combat it. At the very least, the contagion will affect them. But maybe with a little bit of luck, it won't infect them. But we're going to start this story with the fresh arrival of one Liza. Well, Liza to her friends. Her full name is Elizabeth Waters. She is a beast. She is of the Ingumar family. And for anyone who didn't watch our character creation, perhaps Morgan would like to tell us a little about Liza and why she's come to Odense.
Liza has come to Odense because she was reached out to by a former contact she had during her brief stint as a hunter in the Lucifuge. She's now no longer associated with that particular group, but is very much pursuing supernatural secrets, and the message that she received piqued that curiosity in the extreme.
Indeed, you've only been here a matter of days, not even weeks. You've just found your temporary lodgings here. You're currently staying in a hotel, and your first impressions of Odense is it's a small town. Not much seems to be going on here. There doesn't even seem to be that much of a thriving nightlife. The tales of how Danes handle themselves seem to hold true. They like to keep themselves, they like to drink among themselves. They prefer spending fun time back at home rather than going out, but that's by no means a widespread rule. It's just your first impressions. Worryingly, when you were invited to Odense, or perhaps it would be better to describe it as warned about Odense by your contact, your former companion from the Lucifuge, a conspiracy that's pretty hard to extract yourself from, except you had a fairly good reason when your bestial nature manifested. It wasn't on good terms. And the warning that reached you came in the form of a brief email from one Benjamin Vandemar. Now, Benjamin was a Danish American. You had operated with him as a hunter for a few years, and as far as you can measure it, they were productive. You certainly brought down some monsters, locked away a few spirits, furthered the aims of your conspiracy, which always felt to you like it was operating for the greater good. But you lost touch with Benjamin, as you lost touch with most of the members of your conspiracy, simply because of your nature. Those of them who knew what you had become either wanted you dead, or assumed you were dead because you made your way out of that conspiracy quickly. They certainly have the tools to bring down a beast, especially a young one. And so when you received an email from Benjamin, it came as somewhat of a surprise, because you had changed your methods of contact. You had changed dress. You had moved far away from the circles in which you were known. It would imply that the Lucifuge had been keeping track of you all this time, or at least this member had been. And the email was mysterious, alarming. Benjamin explained in it that he had been living in Odense, had been sent there by the conspiracy, but they had never explained why, or why he had been sent there alone. He said he should have smelt something was off immediately, that this isn't how the Lucifuge operates. He was being dropped in there to see whether something would bite. And as his email read, oh boy, did something bite. There is something seriously wrong in this city, Liza. The city itself wants to eat its inhabitants. The city itself is corroding the insides of those who live here. It wants them dead. It wants them dead by their own hand. And there is a force behind it, a force that Benjamin hasn't yet tracked down. But he needs help, and he doesn't trust his conspiracy to back him up. So he reached out to you. He asked you to come as quickly as you could. He gave you a time, a date, and a place for the two of you to meet. He requested, of all places, that you would join up outside Odense Zoo on the noon after your arrival. Seemed a strange place to meet, but Benjamin never arrived. And so now you're back at your hotel. You don't know what's become of him, where to even really start looking. All you have is this, could be paranoid rambling in the form of an email from a hunter who you always knew as pretty stoic and reliable. So I turn it over to you. What is Liza doing at this point with this information?
I think she would largely be at a loss. When she would have gone to meet him, she would have been expecting a number of things, a trap, for example, or to actually have him be true to his word. What she wouldn't have been expecting was for him not to be there at all. So immediately being the kind of mental problem solver that she is, she would try and start doing some research to see if she could find about him in the area. Anything that mentions him, obituaries, potentially start calling around for hospitals to see if anyone with his name had been admitted. Really trying to find out what had happened to him. She wouldn't give any of her, she wouldn't give her name when she called these places. She would be a slightly different story every time. She's looking for her brother or boyfriend, any number of things. But really wants to track down and figure out what happened to him and where did he go. Did he just get in an accident on the way to the zoo, or did something find out they were going to be meeting and solve a problem?
I'm not going to make you roll for that, because you've thought it out well. You've considered the kinds of things that Liza would do, calling around the city, finding out what's what, checking the news, and so on. You don't find any report of Benjamin having been injured or murdered or anything like that happening in the last couple of days since he reached out to you. I guess he reached out to you about a week ago, giving you enough time to put your affairs in order and get here. There's certainly nothing like that. There is a record of Benjamin's involvement with the charity work, however. This is from about 3 weeks prior. Something to do with the Odense library. Seems like the kind of thing he was doing. He was always a scholarly type, but it looks like he was running some kind of charity drive there at the library. While that could be written off as mundane, if he was sent here for a specific purpose by his conspiracy, your conspiracy, you know that there could be a little more to it than that. Now, if you want to dig any deeper with your research, I am going to ask you to roll.
I think she would very much want to know what type of work he was engaged in, and if she could find anything more, though I don't know how much of that information would even be publicly accessible without going there. So a trip to the local library might be in order, I think.
Okay. Now, just to establish, obviously, as a beast, you may be aware of some of the other beasts hereabouts in the city. It's not like you all meet up at the same place, exchange business cards, and go your separate ways, but often primordials can sense one another and keep to their own territories. That was something you found when you approached the zoo that time. While you didn't encounter another primordial, you definitely got the sensation that there was some kind of lair there. It would be an appropriate location, you would think, if you were that way inclined, if that was the kind of beast you were. Yeah, the zoo, that would make a lot of sense. A lot of nightmares spring out for little children in a place like a zoo. But you certainly haven't encountered the beast that dwells there.
It's interesting. So there's a potential lead outside of the library in tracking down another beast. Now, I do have a question. I had wanted her actually to end up having her local library in Odense, as a potential chamber. Being cautious, she would have tried to establish that as soon as possible after arriving in town. Would she have already done so, or is that something that I should look towards her doing?
I think that's something you need to look towards your character doing.
Okay. With that in mind, that is probably where she would head next for now, because she very much feels the need to kind of establish some territory that's not probably directly adjacent to people that are setting up near the zoo, for example, and somewhere that will be relevant to her particular hungers and interests. So with any luck, not only will she find information that she's after, but she'll also find a potential chamber.
You do have a hunger for secrets and knowledge, don't you?
Yes, she does.
Okay, well, before we go back to Liza, let's take a look at what's going on with our unfleshed Promethean, Maya. Or Maia, if one was to be completely correct, but Maya as far as she's concerned. What does Maya do on an average night in Odense?
On an average night, Maya can be found prowling the more untoward sections of the city, not necessarily looking for trouble or looking for problems to solve. She's very curious about human behavior. She knows just from observation that humans act much differently at night, be it because, you know, they've had drinks or they're out with friends trying to impress somebody. And it's very interesting to her to see this kind of, you know, back and forth between somebody she might see in the day in a business suit and somebody, you know, she might see at night, that same person. You know, go ahead.
In that case, I think we've stumbled onto where your character may be, and it may even connect you to another character before you even expected it. Maybe you developed a fascination with one of the humans that you had encountered recently in the city. I like to think that Maya occasionally, as you say, she kind of picks up a scent, a tail, and just follows someone around. There's no threat there, although certainly the target might disagree. You just like to know how these people behave. You are, after all, an automaton, at least you were. And this place that you followed, a young lady looks very similar to yourself as far as your awareness goes. Took you to a place called the City Club. The City Club is a bar for LGBTQ plus people. It's a concept you are, of course, aware of, even if you don't necessarily understand it. And it's a thriving club, especially right now on a Friday night. Despite the fact your character is, of course, trying her best, it's still pretty daunting to go to a location like this, somewhere so packed with humanity. You have witnessed what happens when things get a little out of control and how humans can turn on creatures like you. But you want to know how your target behaves. So I'm going to ask you to describe, what is this person that you've made an attachment with? Where did you first encounter her? And what are you doing now? Are you following her into the club?
Maya would have first encountered her on the street outside of a cafe, and she would have been on the phone angrily speaking with somebody in the middle of an argument, which would have been the first thing to draw her attention. And just kind of watching and listening along to this conversation, she would have picked up a, "I love you too." And well, that's very interesting way for people to, I haven't seen that yet with people who love one another. So I think she would have followed her more to see how this angry side of love compares to the softer side that she's kind of been more introduced to. So I think she would have been very interested in following her and seeing how that manifested. And theoretically, maybe if she can follow her to the person she was arguing on the phone with, she might get better insight, if she can see them in person. So.
Okay, so you follow this young woman into the club, where, as I say, it's busy, busier than you would normally like, but that fascination, that desire to know more, drives you forward. You find your target sat at the bar, and the bar's heaving with people, but clearly this is a strong-willed individual. She's cleaved a path through the throng and taken a seat and ordered a drink. And it's not some fancy drink. There's no umbrella sticking out of it. This doesn't tell you anything about her personality beyond the fact that she wants a hard drink. You would measure it a double, maybe a triple. The bartender's being generous. And she slams it back before slamming the glass down on the bar and asking for another. Through your study of human behavior, you've seen this kind of thing in the movies all the time. There's always someone who's hard-bitten up against it, who wants one drink too many and doesn't know when to stop. How far you involve yourself in that, it's up to you. As you're standing there watching, you lose a little track of yourself. You get nudged and jostled by a few people who want to get to the bar past you. One young man says, "Hey, move it or lose it, lady." He cuts in front of you.
She wouldn't argue. She would let herself kind of be pushed out of the way. It is obviously, especially in a place like this, much easier to watch when you are out of the way than it is to be in the middle of any particular crowd. She isn't quite brave enough to go approach this woman yet, so she would make her way to the side of the bar, not really in the attention of the bartender, but somewhere close. And kind of try to emulate what she would have seen other people eavesdropping at bars do. She'd kind of elbow up on the counter and, you know, just kind of people watch as maybe, you know, she can overhear something between the bartender and this woman, or this woman and another patron, or anything to explain, you know, the connection between her angry conversation and her slamming back these drinks and what happens next.
Okay, the music in the bar is pretty damn loud. You do kind of wish that she had occupied the pool hall, which is in the section that you are not in, because people are less likely to be shouting over the music. This does mean listening, overhearing what exactly is being exchanged is quite hard without getting right up next to her. So I'm going to ask you to make a choice. You can either keep your distance and make a roll and try and pick up what she's saying to the older woman who's just gone up beside her and is trying to talk to her over the loud techno music that's belting out into the club, sending lots of people onto the dance floor, but not your quarry. Or you can move straight up next to her and perhaps be less discreet about your actions. You'll definitely hear what's being said, but you might also be called out for it.
Well, now that somebody else has got her target's attention, she's feeling a little less certain about keeping her distance. With this new person in the picture, Maya would kind of push her way back into the front of the crowd and be near enough to the woman that, you know, as she orders and waits for her drink, she could more easily overhear this conversation. But that's what she would do. She would go and put herself as close to this woman as possible and raise her hand for the bartender's attention with the intent to waste time, you know, doing what people do at bars. And that's what she's going to do.
Yeah, okay. The act is a perfect emulation of how someone might behave at a bar, signaling for a drink. Clearly, your Promethean has been studying human behavior well, and, you know, or at least basically. So you do pick up on what's being said. It's a simple exchange. The older woman, long curled hair down to her shoulders, is offering your target a drink, maybe some fun. Let's get away from here, have a dance, let your hair down, she says. None of her words are breaking through the veneer, the shell that your target has erected around herself. And you think you can tell why. Every single time this old woman urges and jostles, and she's clearly a little drunk, your target's jawline is clenching. And there's something you can appreciate from an aesthetic perspective, that mechanical clamp down of jaws, teeth together. You can see the cheekbones working through the skin. There's something hypnotic about that. Something almost reminiscent about when you've practiced expressions in the mirror. She's just getting more and more angry until finally she just hisses through her teeth at this older woman, and you hear every word just because of how close you are. Do I look like I'm here for a good time? Buy me a drink and then fuck off. The older woman doesn't buy her a drink, but does fuck off. Now, before we get back to Maya, I would like to find out what Connor is doing on a night like this. Connor, our changeling.
Yes. What day of the week is it?
We're on a Friday night.
Ah, well, Connor is definitely out and about. I mean, it is not only what spring is about, but as was said before, we were talking about, or actually we were talking offline about how people gather here, and how, that there are a lot of small private, we get-togethers, but Friday nights. Friday nights are for the big thing. Friday nights are for going out. Like it's traditional, and that tradition matters. So very much out at one of the clubs. That's a very spring thing here, and specifically, we have decided that the court. I don't know if they own, but they pretty much run this specific club that we're talking about. They may own it. I'm not sure. That's up to you. But so he's probably there. And about what time? We're not towards the end of the night. This is still fairly early, correct?
I would put it down as about 9 p.m. So for the sake of everyone else, that means the library is still open. The library stays open till late. So, but your spring court in Odense does run one of the clubs, the Cat and Mouse.
Okay.
And it's a fairly popular club. It's seen better days, but you could say the same thing for the spring court in Odense generally. One of the most popular clubs in Odense at this time is the Slaughterhouse, which, despite having a fantastic name, has no lost affiliation, not yet. You're aware that there are a bunch of autumnal changelings that hang around in Odense. They don't have much congregation, but there's been talk that changelings have got to run a night venue here. We've got to take, one of them's got to be a booming court. And if spring is waning and summer's not moving in, come on, autumn court, slaughterhouse. The two go together pretty nicely. So there's a little bit of rivalry there. But the spring court's a sad state of affairs. They're a bit dusty and creaky. Yeah. So if you're heading to the Cat and Mouse to meet up with your peers, then by all means you can do so. If you'd rather go to the Slaughterhouse and rub shoulders with some autumn court changelings, then you could do that instead.
Well, it being 9 o'clock, I'm probably going to do the natural thing, which is go to the Cat and Mouse because the drinks are significantly cheaper from me. And then in an hour or two, head out and go to the other clubs while I'm already feeling nice and don't need to buy as many drinks when I get there. So I'm probably first going to stop at the Cat and Mouse, schmooze with, my court friends, make sure everything's on the up and up, because I am spring, but I also am the one who takes care of problems for the spring. In that I am spring, but I am naturally able to, beat the crap out of people that are giving us trouble. So I like to make sure at the club that we aren't having any, we need a bouncer problems, because I'm not the club's bouncer, but I take care of the things that the bouncer won't take care of.
Lovely. Okay, you head into the Cat and Mouse. Probably just as well. Slaughterhouse won't open for another couple of hours. It's not that kind of club. Whereas the Cat and Mouse, on a Friday night like this, a little more active. They even serve food. So, what kind of club is this? Right now, it's live music. There's a white guy playing an acoustic guitar on the stage. You wish the spring court hadn't fallen to this level, but this is where we are. And there's a small crowd here. Mostly families by the look of it, a few couples. This isn't where people go to have a good time these days, nor these nights, or maybe not on a Friday night. You recognize some of your peers from the spring court. You recognize Jenny. She's an ogre who is often found around this place. She's getting on little in years, but is always known to have a good time. If plied with enough alcohol, berries, or just has her adrenaline up. You can see the lady of the court is in attendance as well, but no one is attending to her. The Lady of Spring, Lady Goldacre, is sat in her own booth. Looks like she's playing solitaire with cards. She's quite obviously keeping herself to herself, isn't expecting any kind of business tonight. There's a couple more changelings. You see someone from Winter is here. You don't know whether it's on business or whether it's just a social call. You don't recognize, well, you can't remember their name off the top of your head, but they're speaking to another spring courtier that you know, Jeffrey. Jeffrey's a cunning young sort, sometimes a bit of a rival of yours for swagger and accomplishment, but you two get on, unless you're in competition with each other, in which case there's a rivalry there.
Okay. Well, I would definitely go up to the bar, get myself a drink, say hi to the bartender, make sure nothing untoward's going on, just in that almost the unspoken, well, not the fully unspoken, but the, hey, you had any trouble? And do I get anything? Do we have any issues?
Bartender just shakes his head. No,
Okay.
not really, Connor. It's a quiet Friday night, which I know is a tragic tragic assembly of words, but it's a quiet Friday night, like every Friday night. He shrugs. The bartender isn't a changeling, but knows all of you well enough to know you're in some kind of clique. Yeah. Makes no assumptions really on what you are: religious group, political organization, gaming group. He shrugs, gives you your usual, a pint of real ale. They have a guest ale every week because they're that kind of hip and trendy bar.
Oh yeah.
Gives you a guest ale. This one's called Crop Circle, he says.
I thank him, toast him, and I'm going to head towards the Lady Goldacre. I just want to see if she's actually playing solitaire or if she's doing something strange, because she tends to do a lot of strange things.
She does. So you don't become the lady of the court by being normal all the time.
Absolutely. So I'm going to make sure, to head in that direction, more in the very obvious spying way. Like, I'm not trying to hide. I'm going to see what she's doing. And if she really is playing solitaire, I'm going to leave her alone. Because, that game has a name for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Again, no role required here. You're describing what you're doing. It's not that difficult to pass by and get a sense of what she's up to. You can tell that to any mortal passing by who's never witnessed an ounce of glamour, solitaire is exactly what she would be playing. You can see there's a little more to the cards than that. You can see what's going on here. You're not sure whether she's fiddling around with a token of her choosing. She does like to play with cards quite often. This is definitely something of importance to her, and you've seen these cards occasionally. It's like all of them have moving images on them. You've never got a straight answer from her, which is pretty typical of Lady Goldacre. She doesn't give a straight answer often about what the cards do, whether it's some kind of fortune telling, whether it's communication with other changelings. She seems to vary her responses every now and then, but you can see that she's laying cards on top of each other as if playing a game of solitaire, and occasionally those cards glow slightly or dim slightly or crackle with power slightly. For her part, she doesn't react to any of this. She's not joyous that she's won or sad that she's lost or at all expressive. She's just studying the cards intently.
Okay. That follows with what I expect of her. I will leave her be then, because in the past, bothering her while she's doing this tends not to work out so well. So, as it is a Friday night, and one should be in a place a little bit more exciting than this.
Hey, Connor, just as you're about to make a decision, you are beckoned over by Jeffrey, your sometime rival.
Ah, Jeffrey. Well, I will absolutely head on over to the, chair or booth or bar, wherever he is, and ask him, hail him and ask him how the night is.
No, not bad, Connor. What do you think of the suit? What do you think of the threads? He gestures down to himself. He's bought a new suit. He's dressed in a three-piece, has his waistcoat, has a pocket square. It's all very dapper.
I mean, I think it looks great if you're headed to a wedding, a formal affair. It's an interesting and ballsy choice for a Friday night club. But honestly, you're rocking it, man. So, keep that up. You might want to add a hat, though.
Yeah? Really? Well,
it's got to be the right hat.
I don't think you're taking my choice of clothing seriously, Connor. And you're right. This isn't the kind of outfit I'd wear to a club, especially not a dive like our club. This is the kind of outfit I would wear to an exclusive party like the one I'm headed to tonight, and not the one that you're going to. And I don't think hats would be appropriate. They're very passé. There was a period of time, lasted about 2 months, where the guys were wearing hats. And I know you never got the memo that that period of time finished, but it did. So it may be time to hang up the trilby, Connor. Those days are gone. Anyway, before you try and riposte, I should really introduce you to my friend. He's someone you want to get to know.
Please do. I would love to meet anyone who is a friend of yours as a friend of mine.
Oh, I know. This is Takami. The Winter Courtier is East Asian in appearance. Takami isn't from around here, if you couldn't tell. But he really wants to get to know our city. But here's the thing, and I don't know how many Winter Courtiers you do know in Odense, but I don't know that many. I know that we used to have a few, but they've all gone quiet lately. Now, I just assumed that was court politics. The Winter crew like to keep to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But Takami hasn't been able to find any of them either. Been looking at all the usual spots, been hanging out down at the gardens in the middle of the night, and nothing, nobody, certainly nothing, no lost like us, So, egg on my face for asking you, I know, but have you heard anything? Lady Goldacre's being as evasive as you would expect.
So when was the last time I did see any member of the Winter Court? Has it been about as long as he says?
Well, you've seen Takami before. You think you saw him about last week, now that you're putting your dots together. And he wasn't here. You think you saw him at the slaughterhouse, actually. But he is Winter. You heard it there as well. And come to think of it, aside from Takami, you've probably not seen a Winter Courtier for a couple of months. And that's not that uncommon. Winter and spring aren't always hand in hand. But now that you come to think of it, it is a little strange. You've heard nothing. Then again, it would be stranger still if something had happened and Lady Goldacre didn't tell you.
She is a bit strange, though. Okay, so I'll tell him. Well, I stop to think. I haven't seen anyone recently other than Takami. Have we asked the lady?
Yeah, I asked her up front, Takami's a good guy, staying with me temporarily. Because he was supposed. This is the thing. He was supposed to be staying with one of the members of his court when he got here. That's what he was supposed to be doing.
Oh, okay.
And he turns up at the house. No one's there. He's not going to just break in because you don't know what's behind that door.
Mm-mm.
And so, first thing he does is try and find more of us. He goes to the slaughterhouse, gets to spend a few nights on a couch of an autumnal, and a few nights is about all you want to spend on the couch of an autumnal. So then he comes here, wants to know if we've heard anything, and I asked Lady Goldacre earlier tonight, and she pretty much told me to leave her alone. Is the nicest way of putting it.
That is, well, that makes me worry less in some ways, because she'd tell us if there was anything truly serious going on.
He lowers his voice. Well, I would have said that. But what if she just doesn't know? I mean, obviously we place an awful lot of faith in her. She's been around a lot longer than we have, and that's fine. But this isn't a city where all the courts are singing and dancing in the city square with each other.
It's true.
I mean, least of all Spring. We're a laughing stock. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that we need to work on that, but we need to sit down and come up with a plan to deal with this place or find another, because, well, when the place everyone comes to find you is a place like this, it really doesn't represent Spring too well now, does it?
No, this guy on the stage right now sounds like James Blunt, and if he's Spring, there's no hope for us.
I mean, this is a great family restaurant, and perhaps it could be converted to such, but that's not what we need.
No. Anyway, I do have a place I need to be tonight.
Yes. Okay.
So, Takami, this is Connor. You can look after him now. He pats both of you on the back and leaves you as the babysitter for the tourist.
Yep. Yeah, I had a feeling that was about to happen.
I'm going to jump at this point to the last of us who has not received an introduction, being Thomas Warwick Shields. Thomas, what are you doing with your Friday night?
I've worked the full shift at my day job, which is from 10 to 7, and have been at the city club from about finishing till about 9 o'clock to sort of like I've tipped them well enough to get the Wi-Fi password, so I can kind of just do my research while I'm there. I tend to order a glass of water, don't drink alcohol, usually kind of just ice water. The staff is well aware of that being a thing. They think it's an eccentricity or me trying to get off the wagon or something. But I try to make a point to leave enough money and tips to not seem kind of too haughty or too arrogant about it. So it's been mostly just 2 hours of checking the news if there's been anything hugely interesting in the news that might warrant investigation. I've checked emails and messages from Kalia or from other contacts I would have if they have anything that they need me to look into. And yeah, that's it for the 2 hours up until right now.
So you are currently in the city club, drinking your non-alcoholic beverage. The music.
Probably in the billiard hall where it's a bit like quieter, just not with the crowd. Sorry.
Yeah. And yeah, in fact, you're surprised by how loud the music is. It's a very different feel to 9 p.m. on a Friday. Usually the city club doesn't really start getting banging until later at night. So maybe it's someone's party, maybe they've got a new DJ in, maybe someone just fucked up the speakers and hasn't bothered to adjust them. But it's certainly making people pour out onto the dance floor earlier than usual. This is only to your irritation, because you want to spend the time quietly getting on with things in a place that you know and trust. You've got a strong desire to actually go over to the main bar and say, what the hell is going on with the music tonight? Usually it's quieter right now, but the club is thriving for this early at night. You, before you can do so, there's a hand claps on your shoulder.
All right.
Thomas. Then there's another hand on your shoulder. You get shaken side to side. You recognize that grip on both shoulders from anywhere. Garrett, one of your pack mates, a fellow Ivory Claw, giving you the rough treatment. I knew I'd find you here, Thomas.
I just sort of let him shake me about it, but I'll try to be passive about it, like not try to, I'm just trying to find some peace and quiet.
Yeah, well, you know how I knew I'd find you here?
Do tell.
The smell of perfume followed you all the way from Magazine, all the way here. Okay. You reek like a old woman's purse. Do you mind if I take a seat?
No, go ahead.
Why do you spend your time, he sits down, in a festering pool like this? You know, remember what you are. And I have to tell you, Thomas, I'm pretty good at picking these things up. And I spoke to Kalir and I said, are we sending Thomas to the city club every weekend because there's some kind of great big gash in the shadow? Are we just waiting for Bechalou to pour out and infest these poor suckers that dance in here all night? And she said, no, it's just what he does. He likes to hang around with the humans.
I don't hang around with the humans. They
hang around with you?
We're living in a city, the humans are everywhere. It's kind of unavoidable.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I like to go to clubs as well. I like to have a good time. It's just you pick some interesting locations to take your alone time, I guess. You like to rub shoulders like for like. You like to rub shoulders with people like you. But, you know, the pack likes to get together, and you do love to break free from that. What do you think you are? Some kind of Ronin thinking you can just spend your nights doing things all by yourself, and that will welcome you back with open arms every single night? You're still new blood. You still need to prove yourself. Just because you opened your father's throat doesn't mean we trust you yet. You've not really proven yourself, have you? He's getting uncomfortably close.
I'm still. I mean, he's obviously not intimidating me, but he's sort of like I know not to respond aggressively or try to challenge it anyway. I try to stay as calm as possible, and I say I do want to prove myself, and I will get to the point where I will, but I want to prove it without showing the weakness of needing everybody's help. To prove that I can bring my own strength to the pack.
You feel you've got to do that on your own to really show that you're worth it. You feel like you can't rely on your brothers and sisters.
I do. It's still, all of it is a lot. It's still new, and I suppose I still don't think that I'm quite worthy of running with the pack, even though I should feel that way.
You might be right. You might be right. You might not be worthy. I mean, we've all had to kill. don't tell all the mortals in here, but we've all had to spill a little blood. And it must have been hard for you to kill your old man. I mean, how did...
I think we're not.
No. It's all right. He grabs you by the shoulders again. It's all right. We'll make a man out of you, Thomas. Because that's clearly what you want to be. Prove us wrong. Why not prove us wrong? Go off on your own track. Show what an ivory claw you can be. How pure of mind and spirit you are. Then why don't you come back to us? Prove us wrong. Prove the doubts in our heads and your head wrong.
Fair enough.
Do you know how tempting it is in a place like this to just massacre all of these deviants? Do you know that
on a
temptation?
Friday? Of course I know. I mean, it's on a night like it's usually not as hectic and as claustrophobic as it is tonight. Of course I feel it, but I think strengthening myself against the urge is a form of purifying too, isn't it?
Well, yeah, we're not predator kings, are we?
Well,
Okay. I just came here really to bust your balls a little, to make you a little uncomfortable. Why don't you head over to that bar,
right.
buy us both a good drink, not just iced water. I'll be waiting here. I'll put a few coins into the pool table, get a few balls out for us. We'll knock them around together. That's what you like to do, isn't it?
I'm terrible at pool, but
Even
what
better.
you beat me.
We'll put money on it then.
Fair enough. I go down to the bar and I'm just going to, I guess, order him a bitter or like I'm not sure what kind of type he seems to be, but just
An asshole.
the most macho. Well, yeah. Because, I mean, not just the most macho, straightforward drink I could possibly get, and also for me, even though I will not be enjoying a single drop of it. I mean, same drinks for both of us. So yeah.
As you head down to the bar and you order your drinks, you've got them in your hands. You're about to make your way back. And it's at that point that a young woman at the bar stands up, pushes someone back, another woman older than her, and tells her to fuck the fuck off. The older woman crashes into you. The drinks spill. You hear a cackle of laughter all the way from over on the other side of the club in the pool hall, where clearly your packmate Garrett is watching all of this go on. You've now got beer down you. Of course, Maya is stood right there as well at the bar. It's her target who's just pushed that old woman back. The old woman came back to the bar with a fresh arsenal to say, "How dare you speak to me like that?" The young woman had enough of that. She got out of her stool. She pushed the old woman away. She crashed into you. And there we have a nice moment where two characters converge. But before they do, we're going to go back to Liza. So, Liza, you are heading to the library, if I recall.
That is correct. Trying to make a place a little bit of home and keep digging into the disappearance of her contact.
Okay, well, the library is still open this late at night. It will be open till midnight, usually used, of course, by students, often medical students. It's got a very good medical library here. And the predatory part of you, as you pass into the library at this late at night, It's not full by any means, but there's enough people here to imply safety. But there are dark corridors. The library is fairly distant from the rest of the city, from the rest of the built-up area, and the street lights around here often don't work. That predatory part of you, the thing that makes you a beast, the thing that makes you thrive on nightmares, you can't help but eye up every avenue of terror in a place like this, where someone would become too scared to even come to this place. But it's best to push it away. You're here for a specific reason. You're not here to just mess around with students and give them nightmares, are you?
No, but as she notices all of these, she'd wonder, has anything happened here before that would make this place already a suitable chamber? Or once she's done her research, is she going to have some work to do herself to see about making that happen?
Well, that's something for you to look into. I think, given your character's interest, or obsession with books and hidden knowledge, it would certainly make sense that you've scouted out the library and smaller bookstores and the like around the city. It wasn't that long ago that there was an attack that took place just on the library steps. Someone left late at night and was mugged, and that mugging went wrong, and the victim, didn't just lose their wallet, they lost their lives. It certainly cut down the number of people attending the university for a while. Not the university, sorry, the library for a while. Now, the troubling thing for you is that isn't really a fear of knowledge. It's not a fear of what's contained within the library. It's more a fear of the dark and the strangers that come to places like this. But maybe it could be harnessed.
Interesting. Yeah, she would. Liza would be interested in doing that, but again, trying to narrow her focus onto at the least the thing that initially drove her here. So she would look for a member of the staff and inquire after Benjamin, since he was involved in.
There's a couple of members of staff still working here this late at night. One is at the counter, another one is doing paperwork in an office behind a door. So you approach the one at the counter?
Yes.
How can I help you, miss?
Hey there. I'm looking for a good friend of mine, Benjamin, and out of character, actually. Do not recall his last name.
Vandermar, but that's fine.
Benjamin Vandermar. I know he was doing some work here. I thought he should be here right now, actually, but I don't see him anywhere.
Benjamin hasn't been in now for... She checks. He was doing some volunteer work here. Most of us are volunteers. Yes, it looks like Benjamin last punched in about 4 days ago. He did seem very unwell.
Huh.
So I'm assuming he's off sick. I'm not the boss. That's the guy behind the guy in the office. So if anyone would have received the call, it would have been him. I mean, usually we're told, she starts going off. Usually we're told if someone's off sick, everyone in the library knows about it pretty quickly because we've got to arrange cover. But Benjamin's always taken up with various things. If he was a paid worker here, he probably would have been let go by now. But as he volunteers, we can't really pick and choose when he turns up.
All right. Well, is the boss back there? Is that who I would talk to if I was interested in volunteering? Because that's actually what Benjamin and I were talking about. I was just.
Oh, sure. Usually during the day, not in the evening. But I can ask him. He may just want to give you an application form.
That would be wonderful.
Okay, I'll be back in a sec. She turns around, heads over to the office. Is there anything you want to rummage with or investigate while she is away from her post?
Not yet. Liza's interested in this is actually twofold. Hopefully to get some kind of easier access to the building itself if she does decide to incorporate it into her lair, getting keys, something like that, by being a legitimate employee would allow her that type of access. But she would turn her attention somewhat away from her going back to talk to the boss and kind of scope out everyone else who's present in the library right now, see if any of them set off her family resemblance, see if there's any indication of supernatural activity here at all. Kind of blindly feel out the water to see, why was he here?
I'm glad you're doing that. As she's away, yes, in terms of setting off your family resemblance, you do pick up on one student. You assume it's a student. It's a young woman, well, you think mid-20s, sat at one of the long reading tables and appears to be doing some kind of maybe coursework for university. The woman at the table, she projects what's the best way to put it? A cool, frigid aura, but her eyes burn like green fire.
Interesting.
She is writing feverishly. That's what you notice, probably more than anything else. It's not a quiet study. She's got books around her and she is scribbling down. There's a closed laptop. She's not typing. She's writing with her hand and a pen, and she's doing it quite frantically. Before you can pay more attention to her, you get a behind you.
Oh, right. An application?
Well, he's actually said, and I should have known better, we stopped doing applications 2 months ago. You'd need to apply online. But if you're interested, we are definitely looking for people. No doubt about that. Especially people who can speak multiple languages.
Liza would just kind of nod and kind of wave a little dismissive, like, yeah, I'll put in the application on my phone like right away, and not even really engage with the conversation before wandering away towards the woman that is writing so feverishly in her notebook.
You hear behind you, if you hear anything from Benjamin, let us know. At which point you're over by the person writing.
So Liza would kind of, is there a table with multiple seats?
Yes, it's a long table between tall bookcases. So this is, and divided up with lots of chairs, a couple of benches as well. This is a library that's caught between old tradition and modernity. Certainly there's enough for everyone here. Kind of speaks for Odense in a lot of ways.
So Liza would slide into one of the chairs nearby and not make any attempt to hide the fact that she was kind of watching what the person was scribing so furiously. And then after a few moments, it'd be like, you look like you've been bitten by a creative bug, or your laptop's not working?
She immediately folds the paper over, glares at you, those green burning eyes fixed on you. Do I look like I want to be interrupted?
Liza would be notably a little taken back about that, because she forgets sometimes that not everyone's as open about discussing these potentially curious matters as she is. And then she shrugs off and say, probably not, but I was kind of getting some pretty frigid vibes from you from across the room, and I couldn't help but notice, I'm new in town. You seem to be
Frigid vibes. What are you trying? No, actually, you know what? I'm going to give you the same bit of advice that I have given every single person that has tried to interfere with what I'm doing. I'm just going to be upfront with it. Don't care who you are, don't care what you are, and I don't want you to care about me either. I'm getting out of here, and here's my advice to you. Get out of here. What I'm writing is advice to other people to get out of here. And by here, I mean Odense. This city is done. We've reached the end of winter, but we're not entering a new season. It's the end of the line. You understand? There is no cycle. We're done. I'm the last one. I'm closing the door. If that's not clear to you, then I'm sorry. But I need to write these letters, and they need to be written. The people I'm writing to don't use email. But I can't waste my time on someone I don't know. So that's what you get from me. I hope that 20 to 30 seconds was worth it.
Liza wouldn't back down just yet. She'd be like, that actually sounds really familiar to a warning that I heard from a friend of mine named Benjamin. Said something about how the city could really eat you alive if you stayed too long. You don't happen to know. I'm actually here looking for him. Don't suppose you happen to have heard about actually any of the volunteers here? Anything having happened to them, or more specifics about the city? It seems like a friendly place to me. I don't really get that vibe. That it's almost like out to get the people who live in it. But you're the second person I've heard say that.
She leans over the table. It's a small city, shitbird. We all know each other, and yes, of course, I have heard of your friend Benjamin who volunteered here. It's why most of us ignore this place, but he's gone. So I'm here because I needed to get a lot of information from some very old books. Usually we have to cross paths. Well, make sure he's out when we come in like we're some jilted lovers. But really it's because we don't know when he's going to stab us. So I'm assuming you're in that kind of cadre with him. I'm not wasting my time or energy on trying to work out what you are. Just get this in your head. I don't care about you. Benjamin's not here anymore. And if he tried to warn you to get out, well, maybe you should have listened to him. Maybe he should have listened to himself. Maybe that's why he's not here anymore. Maybe he's gone. Maybe he escaped, just like the rest. That's what I'm trying to do. She stuffs the paper into a backpack that she slings over her shoulder.
That's interesting. So at this point, Liza would do a couple things, both to pursue learning more about what her next steps should be, and also to kind of make an active demonstration, if you will, that she is not quite of the same type as Benjamin. So I'm going to use the active effect of her Mimir's Wisdom atavism to, once per story, request information from the storyteller that sheds the light on the problem at hand. But it's information that never identifies a specific person. And by using an atavism, then her horror becomes visible to the person. But I think the question I would like to ask is, where should I go next to shed the most light on what is going on with this city?
Good question. There's a couple of answers I can give you to that. One is find out where Benjamin lived or lives. Because if he was researching, he might have found something. The second option relates to this person you're with right now. And you either follow her to where she makes her home or meets her companions, or snatch those letters from her to find out where they're due to be sent and what exactly they say. The path lies on one of those two branches. You keep following up the path of Benjamin, your former hunter ally, or you go after this changeling.
Well, at this point,
You could do both.
yeah, Liza has mostly kind of written off Benjamin as dead because the changeling's words kind of settled rather deep in her mind about maybe that's why he is gone now. So after making her brief demonstration by allowing her horror, which is that amalgamation of words and runes and stuff showing up, is the changing still seated, or did she move to leave already?
She was getting up to put the backpack on, but now that she's actually seen your true nature, I guess, in full force, she trips backwards over her seat, lands on her ass, stands up, shaking, pointing. That was rude. That was very rude. I like it. It's bold as brass. And that's refreshing. But that was very rude. You don't just drop the cowl on someone you've never met before. So I'm pleased to have got to meet you. You know, everyone else in my court calls your kind of person a freak. Like an autumnal wet dream, nightmares walking around on two legs. But I appreciate what you bring to the table. I still don't want to know you. So if that was your way of speed dating me, I'm sorry. I'm moving on to the next person.
That's the point that Liza would lower her voice a little bit and be like, you know, maybe Benjamin was the wrong lead here. I do things. You might be familiar with my rather close family, but I doubt you've met any, or any of your people have met any quite like me. I literally have an occult library where my soul should be. So if you were coming here to do research, if you were have any interest at all in figuring out what's happening, clue me in a little bit. I can probably help you out.
If you'd arrived a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, I would be more than happy to dive headfirst into your soul and start pulling bits of it out to read. And that's a very enticing offer, believe me. There's not many girls that chat me up like that. But my trajectory is out, not deeper in. What I can tell you, though, is for whatever reason, those maniacs in the Spring Court, who we'd all written off as complete losers, are sticking this one out. They're riding the wave. They think that the cycle is going to roll straight back round to spring, and when it does, they'll be in full bloom. They're wrong. They are wrong. But Lady Goldacre, she's sure. She's planted her flag in the sand. They will more than happily pick your soul apart to find out what's going on, so they can ride the dragon and say, we conquered Odense. Winter is leaving. And right now, as far as I know, I'm all that's left of these precious snowflakes. So maybe our paths will cross again. But I dare say it won't be here.
Where could I find them? The ones that aren't running away?
They like to hang around a bar where wrinkly white guys play guitars. Trying to remember the name. Yes, it is. It really, really is. I mean, we used to hang out in the park, which isn't much better. There's only so many things you can do in Odense, but that's by the by. We don't do that anymore. There's a big gap in, I guess the best way to put it would be, life in that park now. So we're moving on. You need to go to It's a bar. It's supposed to be a club, but it's a bar called the Cat and Mouse. It's easy enough to find. Look it up on your phone. You'll be able to tell which. Well, I know you'll be able to tell which ones are lost. And I don't know why I'm doing you this favor. I guess it's because you haven't been hostile. Lady Goldacre doesn't like people just going up to her without an invitation or having a good deed done for the Spring Court. She believes that the process of fertility and rebirth is all about reciprocation, as she would probably put it. Or vis-a-vis, I go, you need to give me something before I give you something, and that kind of nonsense. So, harass her friends, harass the other idiots who work with her, but don't get in Lady Goldacre's hair, because she does. She will make your life a living hell.
Noted and appreciated. I will harass everyone else. Happy to pass along your regards if I knew your name.
I'll be sending my own separate letter to Lady Goldacre. I'm not going to trust it into the hand of someone I only just met 20 minutes ago.
That's totally reasonable. You have been very helpful. Hopefully the whole pessimistic thing doesn't end up being a realistic thing, and this is something we can actually do about the city. But hey, helpful. So I will go to that club.
Hey, if you want to remember my name, you're going to have to learn it first. So I'll be seeing you. And off she heads, backpack in tow.